My name's Mark O'Grady from Tax Optimizer, and today we're going to be discussing Making Tax Digital. Now, this is the first in a series of videos, and today I'm going to be covering VAT. Now, the reason for making these videos is that there seems to be a lot of information about Making Tax Digital, but no actual concrete information about what needs to be submitted, the details, how often, etc. So I'm going to be covering all of that within these videos. So, a quick disclaimer. I'm nothing to do with HMRC, but I have been developing a solution for Making Tax Digital. The solution that I've been producing is mainly for accountancy practices, but can be used by business owners as well. It's fantastic for those firms who've got a complete mix of software and also software that doesn't have their own solution for Making Tax Digital. It also highlights the real power of cloud accountancy software like Xero, QuickBooks and Free Agent Sage 1. Without further ado, let's take a look at the software. So here I have a demo company, and now I need to say to HMRC that I'm going to allow access for Tax Optimizer to access this company. So I'm going to click Connect to HMRC, and this takes us to a screen which is sort of familiar to anyone who's connected up a third-party app to Xero or QuickBooks, and it just asks you whether Tax Optimizer can submit and data on their behalf. So we're going to click continue here. We're now going to enter some credentials, and then we get asked what can Tax Optimizer do on behalf of this client. So here we can view the VAT information and change the VAT information, which means we'll be able to get obligations, which you'll see in a moment, and submit VAT returns. So we're just going to grant authority. Now the system is connected up to HMRC. So we're going to go into the VAT returns now. So now, without entering any data, we've been able to get all the obligations for the year, so all the periods that we need to submit against. We can get old submissions that have been submitted through Making Tax Digital. So maybe you've been submitting through Xero, through QuickBooks, or through another system entirely, and then you're going to move to a new system. The new system is now able to pull all the existing data. So let's take a look at a VAT return. So I'm going to click on this one, which is an open one. You've got something new called a period key. This is just a unique ID for this VAT obligation period. You've got the start and end date of the obligation period and the due date. You've got a HMRC status of open. There's also another status of fulfilled if it's been completed. There's a submission status here, but this is to do with Tax Optimizer, and I'll leave that for later. And then we've just got our 9 familiar boxes. So all you need to do is enter the VAT due, the VAT from purchases, and this will fulfill all the details here, and then you submit. So actually, it's not very different to the existing VAT return. It's just there's a new technology underlying all of this to make it a lot easier. And then as soon as you're ready, you can accept and send. Within Tax Optimizer, I give a full list of audits, and if you make any changes at any point or when you submit, it tracks everything. So that's all the mandatory stuff, but what's new with the API? So there's a couple of bits which aren't mandatory, but we're able now to see the liabilities. So you can see if you've got any outstanding payments. So within Tax Optimizer, if you haven't made a payment and it's overdue, I can send you a notification, or if you're speaking to HMRC and there's some confusion, you're able to look at this and get a clear overview of what you're doing, and maybe a payment hasn't been cleared or reconciled. You can also see the payments, so the payments obviously can span over multiple liabilities, but you're able to get a list of payments and when they were received by HMRC. So, a quick backstory about me. A number of years ago, I developed some accountancy software that was very efficient at processing limited companies. And one of our biggest wins was with VAT returns. It was taking 2 people 6 working weeks to process the VAT returns. And we managed to turn that and convert it so it was just a 20-minute process. Now, there's a number of reasons why that worked, and I've built a lot of that into my system. Now, I've broken that down into 3 different ways. There was 1, the bulk processing, 2, additional validation, and number 3, automating the process. So before we go into our first point of bulk processing, there's 2 key resources which I think are going to help accountancy firms achieve this. The first resource is by James Ashford from Go Proposal. He's got a book on pricing available on his website, and within there it goes through pricing per transaction. Now, obviously if you're pricing per transaction, you need to make that process as efficient as possible. The second resource is by a company called Blue Hub, and they've got a checklist of how to transition clients to cloud accounting. So the more clients you can have on cloud accounting, the easier this is going to be. So I'll link both of the resources below in the notes. So let's talk about the idea of context switching. Context switching is jumping between job and job. The less steps you have between those jobs, the more you can concentrate and the more focused you can be. So within software we have the idea of minimising the amount of clicks between the jobs. In this example, if you're processing, say, 100 clients' VAT returns, you're having to maybe go into Xero, switch between a company, go into the VAT return section, submit the VAT return, again switch to the next company, go into the VAT return section again, and you've got all those little steps that build up over time. Now we can leverage their API, and this is what their API is really for. It's by doing the same job but doing it in a different way. Now let's take a look at the software and see how we can do bulk processing. So rather than in the previous screen where we were having to go to each company and then go into their VAT return, we just get all the clients in one screen. These can be grouped into clients, so there's another screen where you can group up clients, and then you can select, say, people with simple VAT returns, or a specific user's client list, or we can select all. The screen itself shows each client, each obligation period, the from and to date, the amount of VAT due, the status from HMRC, and the submission status. There's also an information tab which will show any validation, which we'll see later. If you're using a cloud accounting solution, you can just hit refresh data and it will pull the latest data from the cloud accounting solution. However, there's going to be a number of clients whose systems rely on multiple integrations and can't move to a cloud accounting solution. And in that case, we're able to bulk import transactions. So what we do is we download an import file, we open it up, and we can see here there's a list. And all we do is we amend any of the data, and it just updates the Excel spreadsheet. We save and then re-upload that, and then that will bring the figures back into the system. When we're ready to send, we can just select a load of clients at one time and click accept and send, and this will send all of them in one go. So we've made sure the data's correct first. So now let's go on to the next stage. So number 2, validation. Now most firms will have different types of companies that fall into different categories. You'll have some companies that have a very complex VAT situation and you're going to want to look at every transaction individually. And then you're going to have other companies, let's say a recruitment company, who will just have sales invoices and purchase invoices, and you just want to take the VAT from both. Now you don't necessarily want to automatically send those VAT returns out, because maybe they've put the odd purchase invoice in with totally the wrong values. Now the way that we can capture that is with some more complex validation. So let's take a look and we can find out how we can do this. So here we're back in a business now and we're looking at the VAT rules. So for each business you can select multiple VAT rules. Here we've got one called on hold, but if we add a new one, and we'll just call it test for the moment, we can see that there's rule types. So there's hold, which means it will be put on hold and you can't just send it in the bulk manner. You've got greater than previous period, so it looks at the previous VAT return and makes sure that it's greater by a certain percentage. So we can look at any of the VAT fields and we can say whether a number or percentage, and we can check to make sure it's greater by over a number of percent, so maybe 10%. It needs to keep in within that 10% of that last period, otherwise it flags up a validation error. We can look at less than previous period, less than the previous year, so we're taking the previous year, the same period in the previous year, and we've got between values, and standard rate VAT value sum, which means that it just makes sure that the VAT sales and the VAT due is going to be 20%. And it will just highlight, and if it's not, then it will flag up an error. We can do the same with flat rate, and there's going to be loads more rules that come into this over time. Number 3, automating the process. Now, when speaking to most firms, the biggest issue that they have with VAT returns is chasing their clients. So what we can do, which is similar to what apps like Chaser and Satago have done for client invoices, we can make sure when the VAT return is coming up that we email or text message the client to make sure that they've entered all their figures, and then we can get them to log into a portal to check the figures and confirm that everything's okay. Then the accountant can review it and confirm everything's okay and submit the VAT return on their behalf. We can also look at the payment. So with the new API, we can see whether the payment has been made for the VAT return, and if it hasn't, we can send an email to request the VAT return to be paid. So these small little touch points of notifying and nudging will hopefully speed up the workflow and lower the cost of processing a VAT return. So at the moment, it's mid-April at the time of filming this, and these are some of my final thoughts. So in comparison to the old API, the new API is way easier to code against. The old API, there was a lot of quirks and the documentation wasn't very good, and now the new API is a lot better and follows a lot more standards. I like that they're giving us a lot more API endpoints, so we're able to pull things like payments, because that just opens up more possibilities in terms of automating the process. There are a few things that they're still implementing, but they're taking time to release this API, and I think that's really important. I hate when people rush software and there's loads of bugs and then you've got millions of people submitting VAT returns. So I think they're taking a really sensible approach, and within this year having a pilot system which brings on people over time. So there's going to be some new sign-up processes for MTD that HMRC are releasing, and you'll be able to sign up as an organisation or sign up as an agent, and there's also going to be a process to connect the agent and the organisation. So over time, I imagine they'll add more and more functionality to Making Tax Digital, so you'll be able to submit things like corporation tax if everything goes okay. The other part that they're releasing is the self-assessment. Now, in terms of becoming more efficient, I think it's going to be a lot harder with the self-assessment. I've implemented it all. I'm going to have another video where I explain that and give all my reasons why. So if you're interested in Tax Optimizer, feel free to sign up at www.taxoptimizer.co.uk. If you sign up to a newsletter, I'll be sending out login details shortly. Thank you for listening. If you've got any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and please like and share this video.